Good afternoon. I would say the first slide is, is history. History because the 8th of March, during the weekend of 8th of March, we had 10,000 visitors. And I hope it will never be anymore the same after what happened today. And that will be one of the part of our discussions. I would say the BOZAR 4.0, what will be BOZAR after the COVID crisis and so on. So this building you see is, I would say, conceived 100 years ago. And if I show you the second slide already, is interesting that it's a summary of, I would say, hundreds of pages of a book we published in the recent years from what was the mission and the vision of our transformation. BOZAR became an institution with the logo we know today. It came from Le Palais de Beaux-Arts, PBA, PSK, Paleis voor Schone Kunsten, in two of our national languages. And the question was how to find a new identity. And the BOZAR of the past is not anymore the BOZAR of today. We changed really our complete, I would say, identity related to the reality of our society in which we are living today. In the first place, if we, before we come to the figures related to the management courses and the economic model, it's important what Magdalena said already. What is very unique is certainly our business model, our economic model, but we will have more later. Coming back to the historical and the concept from what BOZAR came with, together with Magdalena and her team, we hope to be in this transformation of the European space. I would not say the European Union, because we are in an environment who is more larger than the European Union as such. It's I would refer to the European Council of Europe in Strasbourg, who was the main institution who discussed culture realities related to education, minorities, diversity in Europe during the Cold War. Reality from East and West after the Second World War. How, in period of tension, culture would transfer borders to discuss all these cultural realities, where art is a part of it. So we are in a cultural space with European common identity in which we are active. And BOZAR is historically not only related to the history of the Second World War, but in the first place, these big changes we had at the end of the 19th century to the First World War, innovation and technology, how Europe changed fundamentally. And we were at that level the first institution where we brought together the concept of Mitteleuropa, of the Gesamtkunstwerk, and Frau von der Leyen, the president of the council, referred to a speech of the Union of September Declaration, was referring to the origins of BOZAR related to the Bauhaus. The real concept of the Bauhaus of tomorrow, where innovation and creativity would come together, related to development and research, is a fundamental aspect of BOZAR and its origins. So today, BOZAR is a European house for culture related in a world in fundamental change. This reality, where BOZAR is not anymore interdisciplinary, but I would say more than multidisciplinary, it's intersectorial already. So we are 1 point more farther than the slide. BOZAR is not even anymore multidisciplinary, it is also intersectorial. The relation between art and science, the relation with art and well-being, the relation with art and finance, all these elements are fundamental and goes above the project of BOZAR of today to have good concerts, of good exhibitions. It's much more than that. And if you followed BOZAR during the COVID period, when we went not in unemployment, BOZAR stayed open during the whole period of the COVID crisis, the last 6 months, you will discover on our program that we were reflecting about the past and the future, repairing the past and preparing the past and repairing the future. And so it was a certain number of lectures where very famous intellectuals, and I could only suggest to all the fellows to go on our site and to discover even these different lectures from, for example, Edgar Morin, who will be 100 years old next year, wrote an incredible positive vision in the post-COVID time, or Rem Koolhaas, the famous architect, about the new way of living on the countryside. So architects, philosophers, economists, Piketty, Luc Tuymans was recorded last Saturday, giving this vision, this platform for what BOZAR could be in the future. And during that period of the Cold War, a musician, in my opinion, maybe the most important political statement of this year will be the Ninth of Beethoven in December with Barenboim, who will conduct at BOZAR the 3rd week of December. It will be related to the end of the German presidency and the end of the Beethoven anniversary year. So that will be very fundamental statement, political statement, where Merkel and the European Commission and Council will be present at BOZAR. So that's the, I would say, the reality of the mission, the vision where BOZAR is in. So coming to the next slide, you see that BOZAR is the number of visitors. We will never be London or Paris. The figures of these cities is not related to Brussels. Brussels is a city related to 1.2 million inhabitants, and we have the numbers of inhabitants who are coming to BOZAR every year. You know, Brussels is not the most attractive and sexy city for tourists, but is the most cosmopolitan city of the world. 185 languages are speaking in BOZAR and in Brussels. So we were really dealing with 10 years ago with about 300,000 visitors a year. We came to 1 million more in about a decade. So BOZAR transformed himself as a city in the city. Today, like Magdalena already said, it's really a house of co-creation and co-production. When I started at BOZAR, we had a very, very minimal public support. And so the only way to make in a federal state where culture is related to the communities and the regions, it was important that we were a bridge in between all these different communities. And so BOZAR today, I'm very impressed myself in the last annual report that we published for 2019. We elaborated that more than 1,000 partnerships in Belgium and worldwide was related to the activities of BOZAR. So we are in a not only co-creation, co-production, but also co-financing. And we will see that more in a later stadium related to, I would say, the turnover 32.5 million. But if I consolidate the value of all the activities in which we are co-creating, we go above to 45 million euros related to the activities. The full-time equivalents today, as you see, 299, but related to, I would say, 420 contracts, because many people in the staff of Magdalena are part-time because they do mostly post PhD research at universities and combine working at BOZAR in institutional relation, being an advisor 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and being still involved in research or the project and making that as a reality of collaborations in these partnerships.
Yeah.
The income structures you will see and is related to an interesting situation. We could say globally that we are deconsolidated. It's a legal reality what was finally never accepted by our shareholders and by the federal state. But globally we could say that more than half from all our income and partnership is coming not from public structural support. So that's a very atypical reality in Belgium with the fiscality of Belgium. We are not the UK, we have not the Anglo-Saxon fiscality. So for many private and foundations, they say we paid already, we will not pay a second time our taxes. And you know, the human being don't like to pay taxes. But the discussion of solidarity, how we make that possible, before the COVID crisis, we were capable to bring a complete new business model in Belgium related to the heavy tax system of our country. So we could create a big ownership to that, and in a very variable way of income and spendings. But again, a lot of these activities, what you don't see in the budget, is when we co-produce with 1,000 partners. All these partners spend also more money on communication and funding. So the consolidation is making that BOZAR, when it's in the media, when we do, for example, the co-production with the Queen Elizabeth competition, where we work together with the Opera House, when we work together with the Flanders Festival or with the public radio and television, when they're using BOZAR, the spendings are much more than you see there, but that's globally I would say the income structure of BOZAR on the figures of 2019, and that we were capable in the recent years to have these interesting model. In the next slide, it's important to see the business model, how we have to make possible that between the overhead cost, what is costing BOZAR. Today, I would say globally, BOZAR, before we do some activities, we are around 18, 19, 20 million euros. So we have to really create a fundamental on income before we create our own activities. And so it's important to see that the tension we have on BOZAR, and that's also the whole discussion was in the media in recent days, that many people don't understand the business model of BOZAR and how much there is a pressure as BOZAR stops activities, like we had with the COVID period. The income who is fundamental necessary to work to pay the cost was really under pressure during the COVID. And so I'm coming to the next slide. You see that the closure of the building for, I would say, 6 months, but even today, the concert of today was cancelled. Again, because people could not travel. And that was the reason that we want to focus much more in the heart of BOZAR, who is the concert hall, one of the most beautiful concert hall of the European space, we could say, together with the Concertgebouw in Amsterdam, Muziekverein in Vienna. You see on the television every 1st of January of London and Paris. BOZAR infrastructure has a fantastic concert hall of 2,200 seats. As we know, we received an exception of to have in the coming weeks. We have about 1,000 seats available in the major hall, and we received this exception from the authorities because we became completely COVID-proofed to create these new activities since now some 2 weeks. Even the museum space reopened in May. The digital transformation was fundamental. Since the first day of the closing, we started our General Assembly on Monday, the 15th of March, we organized our General Assembly immediately digital, and also the investment that our employees could start immediately to work on digital platforms, having no keeping the people in employment. It was possible to keep the activities on a digital platform. And so the real start, we thought in the beginning that we would start in April, then it was May, we started very minimal capacity, but at the end, I'm convinced that the COVID reality will have as an up and going down as a golf in the coming 2 years. We will have some periods of optimism and pessimism, so we have to adapt ourselves in a hybrid reality between the living art and the debate we will do on a digital platforms. And as you see, that as we are not Paris and London and we are the European capital, it's a city of civil servants, highly educated people in the lobby, think tanks, diplomats, journalists from all over the world. So the biggest concentration of high-level lobbyists and journalists and diplomats from the world. These people, more on the public level, decided that they stopped all their international activities up to beginning of next year. So it's really challenging for us to make the reality and to find the right balance between our income and the cost to survive. But I must say globally, even we were not supported by the public state and we had to go on what was done by the communities. I can announce that up to today we could end the year even on the level of all the difficulties, maybe around 2 million loss for this year. Yes, and that's an important element in the way we had to the reduce of revenues, the income, but also the reduction of cost. And it was a very challenging thing. It was a lot of pressure on our staff. We wanted to keep employment. As you know, a lot of debates were in the media where we had to stop collaboration, to end our collaboration with one of our directors, because we wanted to come back to the essential activities of the music and the cultural life in Belgium related to the music scene. We think that the music scene in Belgium is from a very high quality, and as musicians are not traveling anymore, and that we have in residence in BOZAR the orchestra of the Opera House and the National Orchestra, we have an incredible potential to develop without falling in nationalism and local policies, but in high standard international quality to reorganize our context, and in that way reducing cost, keeping employment on, and making an adaptation of the program. I think we can really find solutions for a short and mid long term. And on that level, I would certainly refer to where we had reduced of income related to share our information related to 19 and 20. You see on the slide how it's interesting to see that finally the federal grant related to the European COVID support, you know, the whole discussion of von der Leyen, would we have this big loan? And as you know, Belgium was obtaining about 8 billion euros to finance the unemployment. So BOZAR was finally on last Friday supported by the government to have a supplementary support in our to cover our lost incomes from the recent months. So that's I would say a global vision of the
comment on the sponsoring that
the sponsoring, like Magdalena wants to say, it was very hard to tell that when we started with the COVID crisis, a great number of companies who were long-standing supportive to BOZAR decided to cut immediately in a more, I would say, the more Anglo-Saxon tradition, to cut straight away, starting of the crisis, and to tell us that they would stop their collaboration with BOZAR. Knowing that we have so many partners, Magdalena was referring to about 1,000 partners, and that we were in such a variety of activities, I would say globally, a support of one and another who is not anymore supporting us. We have a critical mass of numbers of partners that we could, up to now, and I hope for the coming months, that BOZAR is a stable institution who will survive the crisis, and that we can create enough partners. One example who is not on the slides, it's important that we create a very fundamental new way of collaboration with European entities in Brussels. A lot of stakeholders are in Brussels present, and BOZAR became a fundamental partner of European culture diplomacy. And so through that way, in our offices, we have the Office of UNIC, the European Union National Institute for Culture, the Alliance Française, Goethe Institute, Cervantes, from all the European Union culture institutes. They have an umbrella organization, and together with many of these stakeholders and federations and lobbyists in Brussels, we won the last 1-2 years about 18 European projects related to all the different departments of the European Commission, not only on EAC and culture, but by DEFCO, AIS, the foreign offices, DG Connect, innovation, research, region policies. And in 2021 will be the year, the European year of trains and mobility. And also there on the metaphor of mobility, as you heard, I discovered it this morning with the Vivaldi agreement of the Belgian government. One of the most important investments the Belgian government will do is the ecological transformation, closing of our nuclear power stations, but also investing in trains for 1 billion. And so it's important to see how we come to these new investments. And then?
I stop sharing.
Yeah.
You can speak, yeah.
We try so. The European reality and globally, what we said in our annual report, that we really came out of our zone of comfort, because that's the fundamental thing in our management, is that in time of crisis, we needed a new start. And the shock in our society is that we can be the critical antennae of what is going on in the world. And so we are not a political platform, but somewhere culture through art can be a part of that conversation, because Brussels has today 650 think tanks who mostly approach Europe from an economic system and a political system. BOZAR tries to bring in another part of conversation on human science related to management, but in another way, management related to center the people in the center of that management, of public institutions as private. The question of ethical governance, smart cities related to human digital humanism, how we relate with this new technology, with this innovation. And that's a fundamental way where BOZAR, in his mission and vision, tries to translate that, but in the first place, through the artists. The artists are really these who bring this message to the world in what we do at this time in BOZAR. So that's, I would say, globally, what I want to say related to the mission, the vision, our ethical reality, our European dimension, and the atypical approach we have in BOZAR. The organogram is related to the disciplines, like you have mostly in all the art centers, related to exhibition, music, theater, cinema, and bring all these different narratives, but we have the horizontal approach, which is more geopolitical way, related to the multilateral approach of the European Union, related to Africa, Europe, America, Europe, the Balkan. Is Russia still an European space related to these dimensions, where the American president goes to America first? We want to come back to reinvent what was multilateralism after the Second World War, and where borders disappear, to have these real questions of today in our society, and at the end, the diagonal of ethical questions, how we can make that. And through that way of approach, we became an atypical model who became complementary to the communities, because we went out of the comfort zone of the policies of Flanders or Wallonia. The French community has to defend its artists. The Flemish government has to defend and support their Flemish artists. So for BOZAR, it was important to overcome and to bring a more global, holistic view, where these artists have an international and a more humanistic approach. So it's why that very good Belgian artist wants to be at BOZAR, because their support they have from a region of a community becomes more universal when they are in BOZAR. So BOZAR can really fundamentally become this European house for culture in a world of change. Thank you.